Welcome on to the Tortillas and Takes podcast. You are on once again with your boy, I'll be sure. And Texas Tech got a win, 7th win of the season. It's really capping one of the best 3-year stretches in Texas Tech history, yet nobody feels like it. Actually, I feel like a lot of fans feel the exact opposite of it. So to talk about that Oklahoma State win and where Texas Tech is at football is in general, we got the Red Raider expert himself, Joe Lopez. What's going on, Joe?
How you doing? Yeah. The 3-year stretch one where we're at, it seems all great. And it kind of feels like, you just drank some sour milk, and everything is okay. But, it's really interesting. I guess we'll talk about it. But yeah, everything's great. Can't wait to talk about it.
We will indeed talk about it. Also on this podcast, we got the people's photographer himself, Joey Gillen. What's going on, Jerm?
Hello. Let me tell you something. Everything's not great. That's my stance. Everything is not great right now. But I'm always happy to talk about a Red Raider victory. Felt echoes of Cliff Kingsbury era Red Raiders. Yeah. Just back and forth. Who's going to have it last? Yeah.
You know what's funny about this game? So Texas Tech wins this game 56-48. And the funny thing about this game is that these are the two worst defenses in the conference statistically, right? Like, I don't know what people were thinking was going to happen, what we were thinking was going to happen. But this game is supposed to be two bad defense. Proof of pod, Joe, we were even talking about, I had to raise my score up a little bit. So I'm like, well, they're going to go over. So I'm like, yeah. I got to raise my score up a little bit, but they were, the offensive coordinators for both teams and the defensive coordinators for both teams were like, hold my beer, and we're going to go over. These are statistically the two worst defenses in the conference. No matter how bad you think Texas Tech's defense is, trust me, Oklahoma State's is worse. They proved it. They absolutely proved it. So let's talk about the game, and a game where Texas Tech jumps out to a quick, early 14-point lead and has the ball back just like that, ready to score again, right? In those first two drives, we had a situation where Baron Morton is on one, right? First play of the game, 34-yard pass to C-Doug. Caleb Douglas, who's kind of been in hibernation the past few weeks, really was able to make his mark on this game. And then also got the first touchdown of the game. And then the second drive was a long, monotonous, almost 6-minute drive. It took 14 plays. Taj touched the ball quite a few times. We got the tight ends were heavily involved in this drive, Jeremy. John Carlos Miller got touched. Mason Tharp got touches. Jalen Conyers got touches, and everything was great. And also back-to-back forced punts by the defense. We got the ball. Life is good. We about to 21 skunk these guys. Joe, how are you feeling as the game starts out?
Not great.
No.
I really wasn't.
Up 14-0 with the ball. You weren't feeling great?
I mean, how were you feeling up 13-0 against Colorado? That's kind of where my mindset was at. Okay, you're up 2 scores against Oklahoma. This kind of has like all the makings for a huge letdown. And boy, howdy, as Jeremy would say, were we in for a surprise on exactly what was going to take place there. So
the second
I was about a 53% confidence meter right there at 14-0, just a little bit over 50, but not much.
The problem, Joe, for me is that I'm so used to I look at teams and I'm like, this team is good or this team is bad. Same thing I had with TCU. I'm like, no, I get what just happened to Baylor, but TCU is a bad team. I've watched them. I know they're bad. So when I see Texas Tech up 14-0 against Colorado, I'm like, well, Colorado's a good team. We still got to keep the pressure up. Against Oklahoma State, I'm like, no, I've seen this team. I've seen them. I get they got a new quarterback. I've seen them. They stink. They're not good. This should be the beginning of a blowout. This should be North Texas again. We should be great. But Joe, I was right with you whenever we had a 3-and-out. When we had a 3-and-out, I'm like,
yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
And what's that saying? The Brent Musburger thing. Whenever you come to Lubbock or Texas Tech, you better saddle up. That's exactly what was running through my mind as soon as that 3-and-out happened. I was like, uh-oh.
And sure enough, Ollie Gordon 68 yards to the house. Bad attack angles, bad ways of plugging the holes, an awful way of trying to force him out of bounds or tackle him. I don't know what the hell. Was that basketball? I can't remember who it was that was trying to knock him out of bounds at the end there. But all in all, pretty terrible. And we're at a shootout, Jeremy. Texas Tech up 14-7, but it ain't looking too hot.
It ain't, and I love whenever we are so good at making people. Here's the irony: is we're so good at making like a singular athlete look amazing. Ironically, this was an athlete who was amazing last season, and this season has been kind of dormant. And then all of a sudden, here's Ollie Gordon doing Ollie Gordon things, thinking he's back in it. He's back in 2023 or 2024, the 2023 season. So after that long break, I thought, uh-oh. I think we may be in a little bit of trouble here.
Well, Jeremy, the best way to make sure to compound the issue of letting up a 68-yard touchdown is to throw an interception soon after. Which
why not?
That's just
why across the middle. Why not?
Yeah, why do things easy? Why do things easy? Just float it. Let's get them back into the game.
I'm in the same boat as Joe. We were up 4. I was like, wow. And I was I was down in Austin for some work stuff, and my dad lives there. And I'm sitting there, and unfortunately, it was on ESPN Plus. So we had, and he's a Texas fan, so we had the Texas game on the actual TV. But you bet I put my little laptop on the TV tray in front of me with the Texas Tech game, and he periodically looked down and like, look at that, you guys are up 14-0. You guys are gonna trash him. I said, Dad, listen.
You have no idea.
I said, listen, you need to wait. And then he looks away, he's watching his game, and then in no time, they're knocking at the door. And he goes, what happened? I was like, Texas Tech happened, Dad. Texas Tech happened.
Sure enough, just like that, Oklahoma State scores again. Ollie Gordon. Touchdown is 14-14. Now, I will say, and I never, there was, and I don't know, maybe y'all are different than me in this aspect. The thought of losing this game didn't really come to mind, and it helped by having this touchdown right before half. I think forcing that 3 and out when it looked like Oklahoma State was going to get the ball and score again. And then right after that, we did another nice quick drive to get the ball all the way down with a lot of dink and dunks. But every now and again, we have a nice play. Coy Aiken always seems to come out right when we need him, when we at his most. So right before halftime, including a dime of a pass and a great route ran by Taj Brooks right at the seam when it looked like we were just going to settle for the field goal. Great touchdown pass. We're up 21-7 at halftime. And I think that drive is probably the most important drive of the game because of that play, that touchdown there, we kind of stayed a step ahead of Oklahoma State for the rest of the game. But 21-14 at halftime. But one thing, guys, if you noticed when I was talking about the first half, I talked about how there were 3 and outs. Defense made some stops. We were, 21-14, nothing to be upset about. It's okay. It's an okay defensive matchup. And you know what the defensive coordinators and the defenses said at halftime for both teams? For the birds. We don't need to play defense in the second half. Why? And sure enough, the rest of the game went to complete shambles. Listen, I know we're supposed to do detailed analysis. I'm just going to go over what, my notes here as far as the play-by-play for each drive goes. We'll go into a little bit more detail, but I just want to go over this real quick. Touchdown, 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 missed field goal, turnover on downs, touchdown, 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 fumble return touchdown, touchdown, punt, interception. That's how the second half went. That's how the second half went. Defenses just went on vacation. Why? It reminded me very much of the Pat Mahomes era. Defense was very optional. I don't know what DeRuiter and the defense side of the ball wanted to do. There was absolutely zero pressure on a true freshman 3-star quarterback. Mind you, both Will Hammond and Baron Morton higher rated than this freshman quarterback from Oklahoma State, M. Smith. I saw it on this jersey. I tried before this episode to say it correctly. I'm just not going to. M. Smith, who actually looked decent for Oklahoma State. I do think if Alan Bowman would have started like we all hoped and were praying for, it wouldn't have been this close. But he has young kid has a nice zip on the ball. But with the true freshman quarterback, they got to work. And so, that first drive, getting the ball, zipping it past, or a nice little pass to Ollie Gordon, but really that zip to Brennan Presley to get that first touchdown. Ollie Gordon again ran for 33 yards. They tie the game up. Texas Tech gets the ball. We get the score again. Oklahoma State gets the ball. They tie it up. Texas Tech gets the ball. We score again. It was just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth that led finally to a Texas Tech victory. Joe, what the hell was that second half?
This is what the second half was. So if everybody needs a visual reference, let me go ahead and look at the play sheet. Bucket. We're done. We're done running any of those plays. So I don't know what exactly happened. If Augusta Wynn got a hold of the play sheets or something and just sent them off into oblivion somewhere. But I mean, yeah, these are one of those games, I guess, as if you were looking at this game not as a fan of Oklahoma State or a fan of Texas Tech. Oh yeah, this is sign me up, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But being a Texas Tech fan as we are, it's just one of those deals. You're like, really? Oklahoma State, worst team in the conference, true freshman quarterback, Ollie Gordon, all of a sudden is Ollie Gordon again, like all of everything that was happening there. I don't really know what to make of the second half other than it was kind of fun to watch, but it was like Jeremy mentioned, evident of kind of like a Pat Mahomes kind of deal. Who has the ball last is going to win this football game. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have the ball last, but we won the football game. So, technically, I guess, how it went, but yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Well, I'll say I mentioned the touchdown before halftime as being the most important drive of the game. Also, the one very important was that fumble touchdown in the end zone. Huge. Gave us a 2-score lead and finally kind of gave us you would think it would give us all a bit of a sigh of relief, but sure enough, Tech had to make it more complicated. Then Jacob Rodriguez gets the interception to seal the game. First of all, Jacob Rodriguez is incredible. No matter what, even when Texas Tech has their worst defensive showing of the season, well, second worst because we all remember Abilene Christian. But even when they're having such a terrible time on defense, Jacob Rodriguez is still probably the best defensive player in the entire conference. He is absolutely incredible, and once again helps win the game. This is the third game this year where I look at Jacob Rodriguez like, yep, he won the game from the defensive side of the ball. Absolutely incredible. But other than that, man, this defense was in shambles. Jeremy?
I had another wonderful cultural moment with my father when we got that fumble recovery and we're up like 56-42 or whatever. Oh my God, you guys got this in the bag. There's 4 minutes and 20 seconds left. There's no way Oklahoma State's garbage. And I said, Dad, I will not ever be comfortable until I see them zeros. 0, 0, 0. And we're shaking hands in the middle of the field, right? Then I'm comfortable. And again, sure enough, Oklahoma State has that long drawn out that drive touchdown, right? And then we have to punt it. And then it's 56-48. I look over at him. I'm like, Dad, welcome. And then luckily they, end up throwing an interception on the first play. But defense was, this was prime Big 12. This is what everybody wants the Big 12 to be narrative wise, right? This was like, this is high scoring, fun offenses. That's all I want to talk about, right? That has not been the narrative this season. Big 12 has been actually a lot better on defense kind of across the board. I think Texas Tech has taken a lot of measurable steps forward in a lot of important areas. They're not great, obviously. There are some games. I think our numbers get a lot more skewed because of a few games versus like across the board, which is hard. Where Oklahoma State's kind of like generally just across the board, they've been really bad. But this was just like Joe said. This is a throw the playbook out. Let's just go ahead and we're just going to take this one off so that we can get ready for West Virginia. And it just puts you in this terrible cardiac arrest, like all game of like, this is going to be one of those where our opponent is going to get the one defensive stop that is needed in order to win this game. And fortunately, Jacob Rodriguez, man, fortunately our defense doing just enough to force that fumble get the recovery, and then make Ollie Gordon try to punch somebody. Like, it was just enough, right? And then we get the points, and then at that moment, I mean, I joked about it with my dad. Like, it needs to be 0-0. But getting that defensive turnover into points, the defensive touchdown, I was like, okay, that's a little off script for me from what I'm used to. So that could be it. That could be the game winner. Sure enough, it really was. So just defensively, I don't want to watch the tape at all if I'm DeRuyter. I just want to like start over.
But how many burn the tape games are you gonna have? Like,
how many would you say we had this season?
This season, this has to be the third, maybe. You got Abilene Christian, which is absolutely a burn the tape game. Cincinnati, that was a pretty bad. Baylor,
Baylor.
Baylor, actually, no. Baylor was probably the worst. Baylor might have even been worse than Abilene Christian. But that's 3 times this year that you've given up at least 48 points. That's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll throw Washington State in there too.
Well, yeah, Washington State was like, that's how many times are you gonna burn the tape? How big is your furnace?
Maybe that's what the new double T is also, is a big chimney, a 200-foot chimney. We have plenty of room to burn any amount of tape.
Well, that's the reason why it's so weird about this defense, is because you'll have a game like Saturday where we just look like we've never played the sport, played good defense. But then you have a game like Iowa State, and you're playing now Iowa State isn't just this high-powered offense, but Rocco Beck's a decent quarterback. Their O-line is really good. The thing about the Iowa State O-line is one of the best O-lines in the conference, yet we play Oklahoma State. We couldn't get pressure on Smith at all. We couldn't get any pressure on their opposing quarterback. So you give a talented guy some time in the pocket, he's like, all right, this Big 12 football ain't too bad. It's just kind of like when I was out in Cali, and he starts zipping it. And so it's kind of, because I would even argue the defense played better against Shooter Sanders in Colorado. Like, that's the crazy part. They didn't play bad against Colorado, but then he played here against Oklahoma State, a worse offense. And this is looking like you got M. Smith looking like a potential Heisman Trophy candidate. So definitely is Texas Tech defense is definitely one that's weird. Kind of talking some stats from the game. Baron Morton, career high in completion, 35 completions, 366 yards, 4 touchdowns. Once again, having a lot. He has had a lot of 4 touchdown games this year. Taj Brooks, 28 carries, 133 yards, 3 touchdowns. Taj Brooks had almost 200 total yards, because he also added an additional touchdown from the receiving end, like I mentioned before, as well as 65 receiving yards and 9 catches, which is a career high for him as well. C-Doug with 5 catches for 105 yards and a touchdown as he made his comeback in that game. Coy Aiken, 7 catches for 90 yards. So, and then of course Jacob Rodriguez, 13 tackles, 1 interceptions, 1 fumble recovery for a touchdown. He had a hell of a game. But I can't just talk about Texas Tech's stats. Oklahoma State, M. Smith, 326 passing yards and 2 touchdowns in his first career start. Right, Ollie Gordon, he made his way back. Only 15 carries in this game, but 156 yards, 3 touchdowns. Right, Dezon Stribling, he had a really good game. 7 catches, 133 yards and a touchdown. Rashad Owens had a really good game. 6 catches, 124 yards and a touchdown. Like, this defense, once again, just like the Kingsbury era, made guys that have had slumps all season have career games, right? And sure, Mark Gundy's probably saying the same thing about his team and all the numbers that I spat out. But also, should we be comparing ourselves to the worst defense in the conference, right? Right. This is really a mid-off. And so, yeah, I don't know what else to say. I will say, I do think this game had a lot to do with coaching. And this game might have been the game that saved one coach's career and condemned the other. And I don't think Tech fans are going to like who falls in which category. Joe, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that puts DeRuyter on the chopping block, and Kitley's job is safe.
I don't know how you can fire Kitley at this point. I really, and mind you, again, I am not a Kitley defender. I feel like this podcast was one of the first ones that really started questioning Kitley and his ability to do things. Right? We did not crown him as a golden child when he was first hired. However, I mean, we lead the conference in stats. Jeremy, you mentioned before pre-pod we were talking about efficiency, and I think when we bring out the efficiency aspect, we get kind of brought back down to the median. But he was in his bag in this game. In this game, I'm looking at plays. I step back and like, all right, Zach, this is the Zach Kittley that was advertised. I see, because some of the plays everything was working. Everything was great. Execution was fantastic. That high five touchdown with Jalen Conyers and Todd Brooks. Conyers didn't even have anyone to block. Conyers could have been the lead runner. We didn't even need him. Jeremy, come on now. Give Kittley his credit.
Why? Because he beat an FCS team? What? Are we cheering as much whenever we win against our pre-conference teams, our non-con? No, dude. I get, so yes, and people are like, oh my god, he got 56 points in the game, just like really hyped about that 50 burger. Great, awesome. You should. That is the bare minimum if you're going to be like this 50 burger king. If you're playing one of the worst defenses, not in the
nobody
conference.
else in the they've not given up this many points all season.
Just want to throw that out there.
Also, that was a 49 burger, not a 50 burger. Our defense scored once.
That's true.
That's right. Hey, that's right. But
they have not given up 49 points all season either.
You're correct. They gave up 42 to Arizona State, 38 to BYU, 42 to Kansas State.
They gave up a lot of 40s, but no 49s.
You're right, man.
Silver lining.
You guys got it. But here's the thing. So if we're going to be quote unquote the number one offense in the Big 12, if you're playing the number ass defense of the Big 12, you better be putting up the most points. That makes total sense to me. That does not validate like the inefficiency of some of his calling throughout the whole season. Like, I'm sorry, you can't play. It would be like if we whipped up on Kansas in the glory days where Kansas was literally the dumpster fire that is, and being like, this justifies your job, man. This win against Kansas, thank you. That should be the expectation.
You heard it here, folks. Oklahoma State, the new Kansas of the Big 12. I respect it. I like that prediction right there, Jeremy. Oklahoma State fans, you can go to his email. I'm pretty sure it's jeremydane@gmail.com. The new Kansas of the Big 12.
Hey, Kansas is no longer, since they beat 3 ranked teams back to back. So that's crazy. But I just don't think even so. And here's an example: the Baron Morton run at the end. Right, we're backed up against our end zone, and it's like, whatever down it was, and Morton runs it. In no realm would I ever want Morton to run it in that situation, especially with how well we were passing it. If he had got his stuff rocked, then suddenly that was the dumbest decision you could ever make.
You think that was a designed run?
I have no idea. And that's another problem about this offense, right? The RPOs are hard to tell because of the way that Morton plays them, right? I don't know if Kittley's going to design a QB run because he does that sometimes.
Yeah, he does that sometimes.
So I'm like,
I can't even support him. Yeah, he does. That's not un-Kittley like.
Fortune favors the bold, right?
Yeah.
We're back at it. And I'm just like, Ey. So, I think there is a lot to like about Kittley in this game, especially. I think Kittley kind of really dug into some more creative schemes and stuff. Yeah. And I remember seeing somebody tweeted, oh, I loved how like Texas Tech lined up in the eye. Even we were down the goal line, Todd Brooks run. I'm like, yeah, that's one of the.
I saw that too. I was like, you mean one of the most basic football offensive formations and plays in all of football.
It's like, the man's a genius. You're right. We've never seen something like this before. And they were like, it was crazy. Todd just bouncing off people on the way in.
I saw that too. Like, can you believe it? They went under center. They had a guy. There's this thing called a fullback. Never heard of it. Kittley invented a fullback. You heard it here first, folks.
Look, and I almost hate to say it, but as I was watching the Texas game over the shoulder of our game, watching Sarkisian's like pro style offense, I wish Kittley would move to more pro style offensive scheme. Because there's just so many more looks that can come from that feel designed to those looks. The misdirections feel purposeful, right? There's a lot more efficiency in roles like that, I think. And I think that our desire to be in the spread all the time is going to be a limiter going forward. And I just
Sark still runs a spread, right? It's a spread, but it is a little bit more adapted. It is a little bit more like a multiple offense set. And you're starting to see NFL offenses that kind of take from him, which is you don't always see instead of it being the other way around. We're doing a lot of joking here. I do think that, Jeremy, you're correct in that beating up on the worst team in the conference doesn't invalidate our feelings of how the rest of the season has gone, right? We still remember the inefficiencies when it comes to Iowa State. We still remember you went virtually an entire second half against Arizona not being able to put up a point. All right, we still remember, in Colorado, while up, you taking your foot off the gas, right? First half of this game, taking your foot off the gas. So, I do agree with you in that aspect that it doesn't completely take away everything else. I think what I'm saying is that Kelly can go into his boss's office, into Joey McGuire's office, and say, I have the number 2 offense in the Big 12. I have by yards. I have the number 1 offense in the Big 12 by points. These are some of the plays that I did. Look at the Oklahoma State game and how we were able to just score and win when we needed to in the second half. Look at, if it wasn't for me, look at it wasn't for our offense, we would have lost to Abilene Christian. If it wasn't for our offense, we would have lost to Cincinnati, right? Like, he can say these things and say, I deserve to have the shot at it. And for example, a good example of this is that if we were to fire Kitley, somebody, a Baylor fan could, or somebody else, or an outside observer would look at Texas Tech and say, they fired their offensive coordinator when he had the number 2 offense in the conference, and you had, you know what I mean? So that, look at that. Yeah. And then flip side of that, we all like DeRuyter, but how the hell can you keep DeRuyter when the numbers say he's awful? His defense is terrible.
Yeah.
And we should have lost Abilene Christian and Oklahoma State and Cincinnati with the defense that we have here, right? And his defense lost the TCU game. Stuff like that. When you put all that together and lost the Baylor game, when you put all that together, you say, well, why the hell would you keep DeRuyter?
Are you giving him the same kind of pass that you give like Kitley in the first 2 years whenever you don't have a true quarterback playing because you're having to, go into your depth chart? He got a pass the last couple of years because, the quarterback situation wasn't quite where it needed to be. So does he get a pass this year because he's coaching the youngest defense in the Big 12?
And that's something he started talking about in pressers in the past 2 games, is that he's mentioned, how young his team is and how excited he is for the future. I think that's kind of strategic on his end, but it's very truthful. I mean, he's working with a ton of young pieces, and to get those guys the game experience that they're having now, it's like this is what actual football growing pains are in terms of fandom. Is like you have a younger group of talented guys who just, they're young and they're getting beaten up by veteran offensive lines, and they're getting beaten up by veteran offensive stars. And it's just yeah, and that's how they're going to learn. And then, the idea is when they stick with it in a year or 2 years, they're going to be the guys beating up. And then you feel like, it's that's the cyclical nature of teams like us who don't have a constant pipeline of these 5-star, 4-star talent coming through, is that some years are just going to be better than others. And so DeRuyter's been doing it. He's already been kind of portraying that message early in the post-game pressers, saying, hey, we got really young guys and we're making young guy mistakes. But in that narrative, I can kind of see the vision. Yeah. I see the vision, and that's what's going to take. That's going to be harder for Texas Tech fans, especially defensively, because you do hear you are seeing that you're giving up a ton of yardage and a ton of points, and the games are stressful, right? 7 one-score games this season, right? And you come out ahead in 6 of those. I think that's an interesting story to follow. As in those 7 games, what was it an offensive play or a defensive play that really was and that can be subjective, but who is stepping up coaching wise to secure those victories? I think that's a harder conversation to have as analytics go to who is really kind of performing, because there's some games this year where we're man, DeRuyter is in his bag. Against Iowa State, keeping them at 22 points was kind of nuts, right? Even Colorado for a half, I was they are doing a ridiculous job at shutting down Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. And then there's other games where it's we are ass. We are so bad. We are just so bad.
And then also, we also got to remember, especially on the D line, we have a lot of injuries.
We
on
do,
the D line,
yeah.
especially. Like there was one game I got really frustrated at our lack of attacking. I believe it was Baylor, if I'm not mistaken. We just didn't rush Baylor at all. We didn't want any pressure. We were like, we want to keep Sawyer Robertson in the pocket, so we're not going to apply any pressure. Ever since then, we've applied pressure in every game we've had, including this game against Oklahoma State. We just haven't gotten there. We just have not. Against Oklahoma State, I saw there was a play where we rushed 6, and we still didn't get to him. And it wasn't like he was able to sit back for a little bit. When you rush 6, you're going to get beat. If you rush 6 and you give the quarterback 3-4 seconds, I mean, that's just, you're going to get beat. And so, one, Oklahoma State did a good job of picking up any blitzes we had. But 2, like, we are actually trying, and it's the same problem I thought we would have at the beginning of the season, which is that, to your point, Jeremy, and your point, Joe, this is a young defense. This is a defense right now, but we have 2 seniors on the team in Braylon Lux and CJ Baskerville. Oh, and Quincy Lede, sorry. The 3 seniors on the team, everybody else, barring any potential portal moves, are all coming back, right? That means the entire D line, including the entire linebacking crew, including Jacob Rodriguez, including Ben Roberts, right, including John Curry, they're all coming back, right? The entire all the defense, all those guys that got hurt, they all coming back, right? AJ McCarty's coming back. Marion Horn and Chapman Lewis, they've had their ups and downs, but they're coming back a year older and a year stronger, right? So there is a piece to that. I do think, and all year long, all we have been talking about is coaching and McGuire sucks, Kitley sucks, Reuter sucks, McGuire sucks, Kitley sucks, Reuter sucks. And all year long, one thing we can't stop talking about is just how great the swag is at Charlie Hustle. Charlie Hustle is a vintage-inspired clothing company out of Kansas City, Missouri. They're supporting our boy Pat Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, and they want to support you and make sure that you're the best-dressed fan this season. So make sure to go to charliehustle.com and use our promo code 101215. That is TEN1215. Charlie Hustle has a great collection of both Chiefs, Pat Mahomes gear, as well as, of course, they got the home team, Texas Tech, vintage Texas Tech gear. Make sure to go to charliehustle.com. Again, our promo code is 101215. That gets you 15% off of all non-sale items. Charlie Hustle, vintage made fresh. So, had to get that ad read in there. But I did want to talk a little bit about the coaching. That's all we've been talking about all year is coaching. I think Joey McGuire has kind of, the red carpet has been burnt to sage. We've been critical about him on this podcast. A lot of people have been critical of him. People have been critical of Zach Killy since like the first game of his first year. And people have begun to become critical of Tim Reuter. I mean, I think one of the things that I've liked to say is if you're criticizing the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator, you have to criticize the head coach. I mean, that's kind of, it works hand in hand. Now, obviously, Joe McGuire is nowhere near on the hot seat. Kitley came into the season on the hot seat, but right now we have the second best offense in the conference in yards and the best offense in points. So my question to you guys is, what's the likelihood we come back next year with the same coaching staff? That's McGuire, or starting really at the top, McGuire, Kitley, DeRuyter. Joe?
McGuire 100%, DeRuyter 100%, and Kitley 85%.
That's pretty good odds. That is pretty good odds.
Like I said, I mean, you gave Kitley a pass the first 2 years because of the quarterback situation. You should be able to do the same with DeRuyter, with having the youngest defense out there. I mean, you would think
Jeremy, I'm going to ask you this question. How is the fan base going to take a 90+% chance of all 3 of them coming back?
Okay, so I think this is kind of an interesting scenario. This is an interesting sociological scenario where the fan base, boy, howdy, let me tell you. So the fan base is, I think, upset reasonably with Zach Kitley. But the optics of that are from an administrative level and a donor level of, the fan base is just frustrated because, they're not getting touchdowns every whatever, and like that's it. Like they're upset that we're not running offenses is they think they should run it like they do on their little video games, right? I believe that every coach is going to come back. I believe that the big three are going to come back, and I believe that that's because the people that are in charge probably would argue that the inefficiency on this team is on the offensive line and the youth of the defense. And you're not really wrong in that scenario, right? Because Zach Kittley, you're statistically one of the best in the conference, right? And then one of the nation, you're where you want to be. And then DeRuyter, I mean, you can pawn that off as – so DeRuyter is an interesting scenario for Texas Tech specifically because defensive coordinators, we have had a lot of them, right? And I think one of the big things to fight that narrative is to maintain a defensive coordinator, especially when you've got a lot of youth on the team rather than like, oh, he's just blowing it with, a bunch of seniors. And there's already been conversation. Joey's kind of talked about going to the portal and getting a lot of defensive guys. Like he's already talked about that. So I think that he's in the mindset that DeRuyter is going to be here, and we're going to kind of fill the gaps in the meantime with some skill and talent. McGuire as a head coach, obviously, is I think you're right. We've been critical on him, and you need to be. I think that's a role of like that's a role of like amateur analysts that we are, right? And like fans of the team, like you have an absolute right to be critical, but at the same time, we are one regular season win away from having 8 wins in a regular season, which Texas Tech has not done since 2009. 2009, 8 wins in the regular season. That's crazy that it's taken that long, right? And we can feel like. And here's where my ire comes from of like where I understand that this season is a disappointment, because the season when we first came into it was supposed to be a cupcake. This was like, we may get our way into the Big 12 championship. Like we may get there, right? Albert, obviously the most cynical of us, but Joe and I are both like, there's a pathway to it. Now the season shaped up a lot differently than we thought, but I think it's the narrative around the Baylor game. I think it's the narrative around the Baylor game being like, people are still going to be like, well, I think there was something really wrong with the communications. TCU was just a flat out loss. That was embarrassing. Colorado, okay, so Washington State, people are going to say it was because we didn't have Taj. Baylor, it was obviously communication, stealing our stuff. Obviously. TCU, well, that was a mulligan. Maybe they were stealing signs too, who knows. And then Colorado was, officiating, right? Officiating, and they pay the refs. But if you win out and you get this win over West Virginia, and then you have 8 wins, that's more than Texas Tech fans are used to. That's huge. And if you get a bowl game and you win that, you have 9 wins. Whoa! You are sniffing a 10-win season. That's crazy, bro. Texas Tech fans will be upset with that, which is even crazier. And here's where it sucks: is like I feel you, Tech fans. A couple of different calls, and you are in a completely different season. But that's not how football works. You're going to have all 3 coaches come back because all 3 have valid reasons to come back, right? They have valid reasons to be criticized, and I think that should be talked about during the offseason. But like we had said at the beginning of this season, that this season really ain't it. Next season is it. Like that's supposed to be like you got a lot of firepower and you got a lot of momentum and people are settling in. Like next season, that's supposed to be it. So this is logically getting 8 wins, 9 wins this season kind of makes sense.
That's how I viewed it I told you guys last offseason that screw the 24 season. The 25 season is what I'm hyped about. It reminds me a lot of, so after 08, we had that incredible run. And then 09 was supposed to be a rebuilding year, but we barely lose to Texas. And we actually had a really good year that year. But our best player was our running back, Baron Batch. And Mike Leach actually said the 2010 team was the most talented team he was going to ever coach. And of course, the nonsense of the shed happened right after the regular season. But that's what it kind of reminded me of for 25. So I've always been on the train of if we could just bring everybody back, 25 is going to be a very good team. Now, I will say this, Jeremy, to your point. I think so a lot of stuff hinges on the West Virginia game. and I think we're counting our chickens before they hatch a little bit. When I say we, I mean all of us collectively on Texas Tech Twitter and all that other stuff. But if we are to get to 8 wins, it'll be the first 8-win regular season year since 2009, when the last year Mike Leach was the head coach. It'll be our first 6-win conference season since the great 08 season. And this stretch of 16 conference wins in 3 years will tie the greatest 3-year conference stretch ever. And Joey McGuire's 3-year start to his career in conferences will beat everyone's ever. So it's in Texas Tech history. So I think the interesting part is that, and I'm struggling a little bit to where it being a good thing or what. We are not satisfied, which is good, right? Texas Tech fans are not satisfied with mediocrity. We want more for ourselves. However, if this was another program, if this was Iowa State, if this was Oklahoma State, right, we'd say y'all are being ridiculous. You just tied your program's greatest accomplishments. I remember when Tom Herman was the coach at Texas. I was like, Tom Herman, his career record at Texas is the same as the overall program record. Y'all are being ridiculous. And so I'm not hypocritical. I'm going to say like it is that I get we want to be better than that. And I think Joey wants to be better than that. But at the same time, it's hard for me to take a step back and not look at it and say, if we beat West Virginia, we'll be 8-4, and we're going to be doing things that Texas Tech has never done before. Sure, we're going to want more. Sure, we're going to want to build. But in our chat, we shout out to Kenzie. She had mentioned it, of how people think of the Leach years as just 2008 over and over and over again. This was the Leach years. This was it. I mean, Leach's first few years, right? His first year, he went 6 or what was that? Hold on, let me pull up this handy dandy notebook here. So Michael Leach's first year, he went 7-5, lost in shout out to Gallery Furniture Bowl. That's what the Texas Bowl used to be called. But he went 7-5 his first year, 3-5 in conference, right? 7-5 his second year, 4-4 in conference. His third year, he ended up going what was this? 8-4, 8-5. Well, 5-3 in conference, 4-4 in conference following year, 5-3 in conference. He didn't get to 6 wins in conference until his his 6th season. So his 6th, that's SIX, 6th season, he got to 6 wins. He only accomplished 6 or more wins twice in the 9 years he was here at Texas Tech. So, like, I think we do put we're very fond of the Leach years, as we should. It's the greatest stretch in Texas Tech history. But this is what the Leach years were. 8-4 seasons, 7-5 to 9-3. Like, that was what it was. And so what we're hoping for is that eventually, right, we will get to that one season where we went 9-3 before going to the Cotton Bowl. We will get to the season where we were 11-1 before going to the Cotton Bowl. That's what we're hoping for. Eventually, we'll get there. It took Mike Leach 6 seasons to get there, and then it took him an additional 3 to get to where we were contending for national championship. Now, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, it doesn't take that long for Joey McGuire, but that's what it was. In the greatest era of Texas Tech football, that's what it was. If you want to learn about Spike Dykes, who is generally considered the 2nd greatest coach in Texas Tech history, guess what, guys? I hate to break it to you. Spike Dykes never had a 6-win conference season. He never did. Now, he had 2 seasons where he went 5-2. Shout out to him for those. But that's also seasons where he had one of the 5-2 seasons, he had a 9-3 record overall. The other one, he had a 6-6 record overall. That's right. He went 1-4 outside of the Southwest Conference. So I have a hard time sometimes taking us seriously when we're doing a lot of complaining and we can't even take a step back and say, okay, now that we're taking a step back, overall, let's think rationally and not with our feelings, right? A lot of people outside of the sports realm, we talk facts, not feelings, right? I'm just bringing facts to the situation. Take the feelings out of it. these are just the facts. And the facts are that this stretch right now is much better than it was a decade ago. I was in school during Tuberville. It wasn't funny. There were no facts nor feelings. I remember the Kingsbury era. And I think we all remember the Matt Wells era, right? So I think that's my, again, I think Joey McGuire gets let off the hook way too much, but call a spade a spade. To act like there was a question about whether we go and forfeit a disappointing season. Are we out of our minds?
Do you think, like, I mean, rationally, as we're speaking, facts over feelings, you think that Mike Leach gets a pass on all of that stuff is if he had the kind of talent that McGuire had the first 3 years? Because there's he made it work with 2 and 3 stars, and McGuire's got 3 3s and 4s,
At the same time,
but it's a different era, so I understand.
But also, whose fault is that, right? Like, it's because Leach never got 4 stars. Like, he always did it with 2 and 3 stars. So eventually, like, you can blame Dykes on the first couple of years, but right. Leach was recruiting the 1 stars and the 2 stars, and like that's what he wanted, and it worked. I think to your point, Joe, I think a lot of people do give McGuire more of or this program, not just McGuire, this program a little bit more of a feet to the fire because we have one of the highest NIL collections in the country, and I think it's the biggest in the Big 12 overall. Right. Yep. We got our first 5-star recruit that we're not playing. We got, for another 4-star quarterback. We got like these high profile recruits. We have this money. So the thought, and we no longer have Oklahoma in our conference. So it's kind of a thought of like, well, now why aren't we doing these things? But again, I think of the Southwest Conference a lot. Right. And so I think of our time in the Southwest Conference. In Southwest Conference, who was the big bad wolf? It was Texas, right? Texas was the big bad wolf. Outside of Texas, A&M.
I mean, who? I don't know.
Arkansas, like who had this wild competitive advantage that we were like, oh man, we'll never beat them. The Southwest Conference to me, yeah, we had Texas, but we also played Rice. Like to me, I look at this new Big 12, and I do think the new Big 12 is actually stronger than the old Southwest Conference used to be. But I do kind of look at it and say, well, in the old Southwest Conference, it wasn't like we were killing shit either. You know what I mean? Like so I think it's a good thing that we have higher expectations. I shout out to the basketball teams. I think the biggest reason why we have higher expectations in football now is because of how much success we've gotten in basketball. And we've tasted it. We've tasted what real success looks like. We've tasted Elite Eight experiences. We've tasted a national championship game and Sweet 16s. We know what that feels like on the basketball side, right? Soccer's had a lot of success recently. Baseball has gone to the College World Series in a multitude of times. So we've now tasted success on a national level to the scales we have not ever seen before, right? And so that's why I really think that we're holding the football program feet to the fire more, because it's like, all right, well, these other programs know what they're doing. What are y'all doing? Because we're giving you more money than anybody else, right? And so I get it, but I just want us to be a little bit more like take a step back and say, and it's the same thing I was saying at the beginning of the year of like, guys, I get it, our schedule is easy, but this team ain't that great. Just in general, this team ain't that great because of the youth and defense, because of the fact that we have a left tackle who has played college football since 1992 and still gets beat every other play. Like stuff like that. That's just who we have. We're talking about the O-line. The O-line, this O-line that we have suffered with for the last 2 years, they're all gone. This is supposed to be our veteran O-line. So what does the new O-line look like? So yeah, I mean, I just, Jeremy, I know I've been rambling a little bit. What's your thoughts?
No, you're absolutely right. And I was kind of alluding to it that I just don't recognize. I don't think that it's going to be one of those things that we're going to talk about how great the season was, how great this first 3 years have been outside of the season, right? Because right now it feels like a disappointment because we're not where we wanted to be, because, people thought we could be here, blah, 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 whatever it is. It sucks because now we have to watch other teams, have success that that was ours, or like Arizona State, we beat them, why can't we be, all this jazz. And so I do think there's a lot of, validity to the fact that all these other teams are having a lot of success. But at the same time, football is a bit more difficult to cure with the size of the team, with the length of the game, just with the quality of like investment around the country for this one sport, right? I think it's a little harder to generate sustainable success. But we have seen improve. Like we have seen a lot of teams have marketable success in a short amount of time. And I hate to say it, but like teams like Colorado have turned around a program. Now, is it sustainable? We'll find out. But like Colorado's done that. Like Indiana's getting a lot of attention because they're having literally the best season like in their history, which is a huge success. And I mean, it's incredible.
Nobody's more pissed at the success of Colorado and Indiana than coaches that are just trying to build their programs brick by brick.
That's right.
Joey McGuire is looking at Indiana like, you've got to be kidding me. Please stop.
You're making me look bad.
Somebody was in my mentions calling me a dummy today because Indiana won. I can't control what Indiana does. That's what Joey was looking at. Like, listen, that's not my fault, guys. I can't control that.
That's Big Ten. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think that, and there's a good tweet out there. It's like, I'm still rolling with this guy, and it's Joey McGuire. After the game, he is stoked. And I think one of the things that made Spike Dykes the legend that he was that he loved Texas Tech so much that like he was a West Texas guy. And yeah, he was average, but that's not really what like Lubbockites want, is a guy who just loves Lubbock, because it is so hard to find characters that like love. You ain't wrong, but like, and there's probably a reason why he doesn't. So, but I think it's so hard for like Lubbockites to find characters that love Lubbock and mean it, right? Chris Beard, he was out of there, right? So finding guys that stick around, the whole Pine Box thing, it's like, that creates a legend in itself. So for Joey to kind of start tagging both of those, I mean, he loves Lubbock, he loves being here so far, right? If he finds success alongside that, dude, you've got a program defining coach right there. Yeah, you may not be the powerhouse of the Big 12, but like top 3 every season is kind of insane for a team that's been average at best in its history.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I just think that, I think nowadays in our culture, we don't want anything popcorn results, but we are building it brick by brick, right? Like a Saint says in Snowfall, I built this brick by brick. I'll be damned if all of it. Yeah. Anyways. All right. So other games did happen in the Big 12 this past week. Obviously none of them mattered except for a Texas Tech win, but they did happen. And so some other games that did happen within the Big 12. First, starting off with BYU just couldn't let alone be let alone, right? They had to go ahead and lose another game. Something about once you lose that first game, you just the dam opens. It happened to Iowa State. Now it happened to BYU. They lose at Arizona State. Arizona State, stormed the field. Chaos ensues. Arizona State winning 28-23. Joe, what do you think about that game?
Crazy game. Kind of like, remember whenever we beat Texas, storm the field up. Nope. Get off the field. Oh, let's storm the field again. Bring it back again. It just like,
theirs was a little wild because it wasn't even close. Like the second left. Like they were just like, they're like there's like 30 seconds left this game, guys. They ain't even close to over. What's wrong with y'all?
What's crazy is how that wasn't an intentional grounding. I mean,
oh yeah, facts.
I mean, he just kind of threw it. He was out. He was still inside the pocket. I mean, it was just.
Yeah. With that loss also was the end of any hopes the Big 12 had of getting 2 teams into the college football playoffs. That's done. That ain't happening. But Arizona State now is the flag bearer for the conference. Shockingly, I never would have predicted that one. Speaking of teams that were at once at the top, but now they're gone. Colorado taking an L, Jeremy, your favorite team, Colorado Buffaloes, to Kansas, who Kansas was 3-6. Looked like they had no shot at a bowl game. They had 3 ranked, or they were 2-6, sorry. They had 3 ranked teams ahead of them. They ain't got no shot at a bowl game, right? Wrong. After win against 17th ranked Iowa State, win against 6th ranked BYU, and then they knock off 16th ranked Colorado's 37-21. I don't think it really hurt Travis Hunter's Heisman candidacy because he was still incredible. But it did really knock Colorado out of any chance of getting an at-large bid to the college football playoff. Jeremy, what do you think?
Cry me a frickin' river. Welcome to the Big 12. If you ain't lost to Kansas, you ain't a part of this conference. Let me tell you that. That's true pain, baby.
Yeah, that's facts. That's facts. Did you like their jerseys? People very mixed feelings about their jerseys.
I don't know. I felt I don't like them as much.
The blacks were fire. The black jerseys last week, those were fire. These, it's a little too much.
You know what's great about Kansas is that really, like, they put on new garb, they're trying it out, and they're winning in it. You know what I like for Texas Tech to do? We put out some new jerseys. I want to win in them things.
To do that. And it was funny. Somebody's going to snip out me saying the blacks were fire. That's not going to be great.
Well, now
Joe, 22nd ranked Iowa State winning at Utah, but everybody wins at Utah nowadays. So what do you think about that game?
Well, that still was a pretty close game there for a while. You know, you're like, oh man, the trailer has fallen completely off of the truck for Iowa State, but they found a way to get it done in Utah, doing Utah kind of things right now. So, and now Willingham's not even sure if he's going to come back or not next year. So I think that's another thing. It's like,
you're going to go ahead and return. This is one, the new way for Utah fans to cope is that, the Big 12 sucks because they can only barely beat our teams. So that's the new coping mechanism, is that they're not bad. The Big 12 is bad because we can only barely beat them. So we're only taking close losses. We know we were dominating the Pac-12 for the last however many years, but the Big 12 is worse because we only lose by a close amount.
It's that Principal Skinner meme where he's like, am I out of touch? No, it's the children.
Jeremy, TCU, the son of Spike Dykes coaching TCU. And TCU, they get you 7 wins. A win over Arizona, another Western team that can't get right. 49-28, big win for the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, and not too shocking. Arizona just, they got their first touchdown in that first quarter, and then they really went dormant until the fourth. And by that point, they were way too dead in the water. So, tough and interesting year for Arizona to see what did they decide to do? What did they decide to do? Because they spent most of their life as a program in irrelevancy. Then they found relevancy.
They tasted it. They had the taste.
And then they had it ripped from them. So what are they going to do? Are they going to hang it up, or are they going to try again? So I'm interested.
We do need a new Kansas. Just, Arizona, hear me out. We need a new Kansas.
You can be good at basketball, which they may be fraudulent in basketball. We'll talk about that. We'll see what they do.
Yeah. Joe, UCF, another L. This is a team that I really thought was going to come into the season. I had them as a dark horse candidate at the beginning of the season, but the wheels are off the track now. They lose to West Virginia, setting up a tougher game in Lubbock next week than I think a lot of fans are expecting. But West Virginia wins that one 31-21.
It's Texas Tech. It's going to be a tough game every week, sir. I don't
regardless of whether it's West Virginia or Abilene.
It doesn't matter. We'll get towards that here in a minute, but Central Florida, having, I think, Dyson, right? He leads the Big 12 in rushing yards, and the usage of him, and not where it's able to compute like better offensive kind of stuff there. I thought they'd be a whole lot better. We all knew KJ Jefferson was a fraud to begin with, and we didn't, that was going to be what hindered this football team, and ultimately it kind of did. So a lot of work to do for Gus Malzahn and them, but he does have a pretty good, strong recruiting class coming in, so maybe he rights the ship eventually.
Really big recruiting class. Dylan's Risk, who is their quarterback now, freshman quarterback, is a guy that has been taking over, but he just makes freshman mistakes. And I think the biggest problem is that when your best player is the running back, it's really hard to play from behind. One of the things that Texas Tech has done a decent job of recently, anyway, is punching the other team in the mouth first, and that way allowing Tosh to be able to do. Because the thing about it is that when your best player is a running back, and you need your running back to be that best player, then you're down 2 touchdowns in the first quarter, just like that, like UCF was. Well, then now what do you do?
Yeah.
So I think that's a big part of it as well. So, Jeremy, 2 teams down in Houston, battle for the Southeast. I don't know if that's really the title of this, but Baylor at Houston. Every time you think Houston may have figured some stuff out, they show you that they're frauds. Baylor wins 20-10, and also keep their title hopes alive.
Houston's defense has been somewhat surprising this season. Houston's offense is non-existent, but the fact that they've been able to hold a lot of teams to fewer points than expected is pretty impressive. Holding Baylor just to 20 points has got to be a big disappointment for Bears fans. It's still a big loss by Houston, a team that was kind of like showed some spark, kind of, and then kind of fell away. Right? I think that they have left a lot on the table in terms of the season, but not an unexpected result.
And then also not expected, Kansas State getting back on the horse. Big win against Cincinnati. Beat them like they stole something. Keeping after 2 back-to-back losses for K-State. They are somewhat back. Huge win, 41-15 against Cincinnati. Joe.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Cincinnati just kind of like, becoming mediocre now. You thought, ever since the Colorado game, they've kind of just been kind of flying middle of the road. They haven't been doing anything special. Sorsby's been playing like a normal quarterback. He hasn't thrown out those godly kind of numbers out there. You don't have a running back game, or you don't have a running game at all. Defense has been allowing some bigger plays and some touchdowns. And, this is Kansas State. Whenever the good Kansas State team shows up, they're a pretty tough football team to beat.
So with all this being said, guys, it sets up the Big 12. So I already mentioned how the Big 12 has no shot at multiple teams, right? And the biggest reason is that as of right now, the highest ranked team in the Big 12 is Arizona State at 14th. We also have BYU at 19th, Iowa State at 17th, and Colorado at 23rd. They're all 4 of those teams are 6-2 in conference. There is a scenario where all 4 of those teams lose to fall to 6-2. And then 4 more teams win to go to 6. Those 4 teams lose to go to 6-3, and then 4 teams win to get to 6-3. That's Baylor, Kansas State, TCU, and for the sake of this argument, Texas Tech. That would be an 8-way tie for first place in the Big 12 conference, which means Texas Tech has an outside shot at a Big 12 championship. Oh, glory, happy, joy. So, how did we get in? Do you ask? It's very simple. It's truly very simple. I don't know why you guys are laughing. It is very easy for Texas Tech to get in. They just need everything to go their way, right? That's it. They just need literally everything to go their way. So I know I'm going to take some time in this one to kind of talk about everything they needed, but and we'll talk about it a little bit more next week. But so this is what has to happen. So starting off for people that may say, okay, well, Albie, how could it happen? All right. So first thing for your viewing pleasure is on Friday night, you got to pray for the same Oklahoma State team that gave up 56 points to Texas Tech doesn't do that to Colorado. If Colorado wins against Oklahoma State, forget everything. It doesn't matter. After that, we have no shot at a championship. We have no shot at getting in. So Texas Tech, we're done. All right. If that was to happen. If Oklahoma State does beat Colorado, hang on to your britches because good things might be afoot. All right. So after that, obviously we need Texas Tech to win. We would then need Arizona to beat Arizona State. Remember the same Arizona team that we were talking about how bad they were and this, that, and the other? Yeah, we need them to beat Arizona State, right? And then we also need Cincinnati to beat TCU. Remember the Cincinnati team that we just talked about that, is kind of mediocre? We also need them to beat TCU. We would also like Kansas to beat Baylor. That'd be great. That actually could happen. We would like Kansas to beat Baylor. If Kansas beats Baylor, then we're in. It doesn't matter who wins between Kansas State and Iowa State. We'll play the winner of that game. If Baylor beats Kansas, then we need Iowa State to win. That's what we would need. Oh, actually, no, sorry. We need Kansas State to win. Kansas State would have to win, and then that would set up the Butt Bowl. So yeah, real quick stuff, real easy. And then we're in the Big 12 championship game. And Joe, does that mean we're in the college football playoff?
Hell no.
No, it doesn't. Because in a scenario where Texas Tech wins the Big 12 championship, it's still very unlikely we get in. It's only the top 5 conference champs. And right now, Boise State is ranked 11th. Tulane is ranked 18th. Army is ranked 25th. And Texas Tech does not have one single vote in the AP poll. And I know by the time this comes out, college football poll is not out yet. But let me tell you something. We're not even coming close to the top 25 there either. So we would be asking for the committee to say, hey, guys, I know that our last 2 wins were just against 2 unranked teams like West Virginia and Baylor, but can you please bump us up over Tulane? That'd be great. So for your viewing pleasure, if all that happens, we collectively would need Army to lose to Navy and then beat Tulane in the AAC championship. So light work.
It could
happen. A lot of stars aligning.
It's a lot of stars. I didn't even get to Memphis.
This is America's conference.
Oh my goodness gracious. So yeah. Yeah, so very not to mention Louisiana Lafayette also could win the Sun Belt, and they currently have more AP poll votes than Texas Tech does. So yeah, just fun stuff. Jeremy, anything else you want to say to the people?
This is America's conference, and I won't hear any other arguments against that.
America's conference, that's right. We don't all have the luxury of playing nobodies until we get to Ohio State. Sorry, Indiana. Or sorry, Texas. We don't get the luxury of only getting to play Georgia and that's it. And saying like, oh, man, we only got beat by Georgia. Oh, shucks. Now, mind you, I make those jokes, but I do think Texas would have beaten everybody this year with the Big 12. That's neither here nor there. Joe, who you got? Or what else you got to say?
2025, bitches.
Absolutely. Let me tell you something. And you know what's funny is that I think 2025, I'm gonna judge Joey probably harder than anything else because I'm like, this is a roster, and the schedule is going to be tougher in 2025. I'm gonna pull up the 2025 Texas Tech schedule real quick of who we're supposed to play. Yeah, the opponents, not necessarily the dates, but we do have Oregon State in the Jones, so that'll be interesting. But we have Arizona State again on the road. We do have Kansas State again on the road. That's always going to be a tough place to play. Utah on the road, which seemed terrible a year ago. We'll see how bad that is. At West Virginia, that's always tough especially because of the distance. And then we also have BYU coming to us, UCF coming to us, Kansas coming to us. Like, that's not an easy schedule, right? And then as I look at this schedule, I'm like, there's a pretty nice places for us to visit as far as TNT, right? Salt Lake City, Tempe, nothing too shabby. And mind you, you realize I did not say Morgantown or Manhattan. So, anyways,
smart man.
Yeah. All in all, my main point of this episode is just like let's take a step back and relax. I will say that I know everybody is talking about the we want the best, and we all want the best. But we also have to be reasonable to an extent. Not every season is going to be an 11-1. These things to build a system sustainability, it is going to be brick by brick, and so that's fine. But as of right now, we are. We're obviously trending in the right direction, right? You could not have told me after we lost or after we quote unquote won our game against Abilene Christian, we'd be sitting here at 7-4 with a chance to go to 8-4. I would not have believed you after those first 2 games of the season. Simply wouldn't have. So we're definitely trending there. But at the same time, all that being said, keep holding the coaching staff and the program's feet to the fire, right? Keep being that passionate fan base. Alabama talking about firing DeBoer after 1 season because he went 9-3. He gonna find out real soon that he better come with it, and that's okay. Like, I don't want us to be ridiculous, but it's okay to keep the pressure up, right? We're not happy-go-lucky. We're not Baylor fans. champions. So, with that being said, for the Red Raider expert that is Joe Lopez and the people's champ that is Jerry McGillen, this is your boy Albie Short, and you have been listening to the Tortillas Takes podcast, part of the 1012 Network. As always, stay wrecked, people.